I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Brian for what he's done here, and also to announce that the BOD of Oath Keepers has just elected him to be your chapter president for Massachusetts officially. He's already been doing the job anyway, so now it's official. Today is the anniversary, not of Oklahoma City. It certainly is that. That's not why we're here. We're not here to celebrate that or Waco, as the town council of Lexington seems to think. We're here to celebrate our heritage and the shot fired around the world in 1775 when the embattled farmers stood on Lexington Green and Concord Bridge and handed the redcoats their ass. Yeah! That's why we are here. And as Mike Vanderbilt said a little while ago, Captain Parker and his men stood on that green with the resolve and the smarts to make them come to them. His orders to his men were to stand your ground, not fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here, and there it did. You need to understand, though, they had suffered through a long train of abuses, multiple violations of their natural rights, and denial of jury trial, warrantless search of property and people, the end of military law to them, martial law, and the laws of war applied to them. It's not just gun grabbing that day. They weren't just after the powder and the cannon. They were also after people. They were coming for John Hancock and Sam Adams. And were they going to get a jury trial? No, they would have rotted in the hull of a brig ship in Boston Harbor. Or they were taken across the seas, be tried in England for pretend offenses, not in front of a jury of their peers, but in a hostile jury of Englishmen packed by the king, the king's cronies. That's why they fought. It wasn't just about guns. The guns was the final straw that broke the camel's back, but they had suffered a long train of abuses. Sound familiar? Yes! We are suffering today almost the exact same train of abuses. What is the NDAA except for a blazing claim that they can deny you jury trial and apply the laws of war against you? It's even worse than what King George claimed the power to do. As far as I know, King George, until the fighting started, did not claim the power to order colonists murdered. But your president now claims the authority to use drone strikes or anything else against you. What can be done to the enemy under the laws of war? You can kill them on sight. If you capture them, you can hold them for the duration of the conflict, or you can try them by military tribunal. That is what they claim the power to do to you right now. It's no different than what was done to the Iraqis or the Afghans. They are asserting the power to treat you, the American people, exactly the same as an occupied, conquered enemy nation. What is that? It's treason. They are declaring war against you and waging war against you. One of the charges against the king, the final one listed, is he has declared us outside of his protection and is waging war against us. And he has absolved his right to rule. This government is doing much the same. They're declaring us outside of the protection of the Bill of Rights, outside the protection of the body of the Constitution itself, like Article 3, which mandates jury trial for all crimes. And they are waging war against us. There is no difference. So why are we not taking up arms yet? Sometimes I hear patriots say, what are you guys waiting for? When are we going to take our country back and put these treasonous traitors on trial? And my answer to them, of course they say, well, this just shows that Americans are soft and too weak and they will never stand up. No. Do you believe that? No. The British officers thought the same thing. They thought that no American colonist would ever dare fire on the king's troops. One of them bragged that he could take a battalion of grenadiers and travel up and down the coast of America, gelding all the males, half by coercion and half by coaxing. They thought they would never fire because they had seen that they had suffered a long train of abuses and had not fought back. Were they right? No. They learned April 19, 1775 how mistaken they were when they were ambushed at close range, not just by the militia, but also by individual veterans, like Samuel Whitmore, 80 years old, killing his field. He sees a reinforcement column coming up the road to reinforce what's going on at Lexington and Concord. He knows what's going on. He decides he's had enough. And he ambushed that column at close range. He was too old to run and gun with the young guys, so he made sure his shots counted. 2 pistols in his belt, a musket and a sword. Fired 3 shots, dropped 3 of them in their tracks, then drew his sword and fought sword against bayonet. Shot in the face, bayoneted 18 times, and left for dead. But he survived. When his family came out to get his body, he was still alive, and he was trying to reload his musket for one more shot. That is what a veteran does when the time comes. But I'll bet you those British officers never would have dreamed a veteran of the French Indian War, who's now a farmer, would dare to do such a thing. He showed them the error in their presumption of invincibility. That's what a veteran does when the chips are down. That day also there were courage serving. What were the militia if nothing but the military power of the American people at the time? And you had military officers and their men stepping up that day, like Isaac Davis, militia captain in Concord. He had a premonition that he would not survive if it came into a fight that day. And no matter what, despite that premonition of his own death, he went out and deployed. And he was asked if any of his men were afraid to go. And he said, "Not a man among us are afraid to go." And they marched down to Concord, they marched down to the bridge, and that is where they turned the tide against the Redcoats. And he did fall that day. He was right. He left behind a wife and 5 kids. So there you got a courage serving doing the right thing. Despite having 5 children and a wife to take care of, he still stepped up. And there you got an old man, a dangerous old man, an old veteran doing the right thing. They fulfilled their obligations. None of you have any excuse to do otherwise yourself. As long as you're on this side of the grass, you are duty bound. All of you young guys, I've got 5 children myself. All you old men out there, I don't care how busted up you are, I don't care how old you are, I don't care what your problem is. As long as your heart beats, as long as you draw breath, you have a duty to stand, like Samuel Whitmore did. When does your oath expire? When you do. As long as you're on this side of the grass, you are duty bound. All of you young guys, I've got 5 children myself. All of us who have families, we are still on the hook. None of you has any excuse to duck your duty. When you swore your right hand, how many here swore an oath to defend the Constitution? Yeah! That's when you made your choice. From that moment on, you're duty bound. You cannot opt out. As Mike said, in the current onslaught against our Second Amendment protected rights, where do our rights come from? From God. Natural right to self-defense is the first law of nature. But in this current onslaught, our obligation and our duty is to declare to the oath breakers and the traitors that we will not disarm, we will not comply, and we will resist. That is the only reply worthy of a free people. And anybody who tells you that you must compromise your rights is a quisling and a useful idiot. And I'm talking about Alan Gottlieb in particular, who wanted us to go along with this crappy so-called compromise for a national database. Where in the Constitution is Congress given the authority to register American gun owners or do background checks on you before you can exercise a natural right? Where's the power in the Constitution? Nowhere. Before you even had a Second Amendment, the Constitution granted no such power. And under the Second Amendment, it made a declaratory statement that no infringement of our right to bear arms shall be done. Remember, the only point of the Bill of Rights is to clarify the restrictions on the government and the limited nature of its power. As Mike said, you got to embrace your place in history. As you guys in the military know the term, embrace the suck. You need to understand where we are. You are the modern American revolutionaries. You are the modern American founding fathers. But unlike them, all you have to do is preserve what was already given to you by the blood of other patriots. It's so much easier for you. All you have to do is preserve what they gave you. You don't have to found a new country. You just got to restore the one you were given. But don't do it for yourselves. You do it for your children. As Thomas Paine said, if there is to be trouble, let it be in my day, so my children may have peace. But what do we do? How do we do this? With Oath Keepers, one of our strategies is to reach out to the current serving. Bloomberg, Cuomo, Barack Obama, and Eric Holder, and all the rest of them cannot do it without the guys with the guns. Yes. If the military and the police simply honor their oaths and refuse to be used as tools of oppression against you, the oath-breaking traitors, no matter how bloodthirsty they are powerless. Cuomo and Holder, Barack Obama, Peter King, or John McCain are not going to put on body armor and strap up an M4 and kick in your door.
They're cowards.
I'd love to see them do it, but they won't do it. No, they want to send other men just like you to do it. They want to send warriors to go and kill the warriors, because they're not warriors. They're pencil-neck stuffed shirts. They will never do it themselves. But they're counting on the police and military following their commands. They think that once they gain the power through elections, that all the toys belong to them, including the military and police. Now, are they right? No. We have seen sheriffs across the country stand up. We've seen police chiefs stand up. Individual officers have stood up. Today, this morning, we got an email from a Boston PD police officer that said, I was going to be there on the green with you guys today, but because of what's going on, I'm working overtime, but I want you to know I'm there in spirit, and I wish I was there. And I told him that we will raise a glass to his honor tonight when we have a beer after the rally. And there are officers across this country just like that. There are good police officers across the country who are waking up in droves because of the assault on the right to bear arms. This is a gift. You should thank Barack Obama. He is not just the greatest gun salesman in history. He is not just the greatest ammunition salesman in history, but ironically, he is turning out to be the greatest community organizer in history. Because he is helping to organize neighborhood watches, militias, posses, and backing up the sheriff, and patriot groups all across this country. Unintended consequences are biting him in the ass. See it as a gift. Embrace it. Use this opportunity to wake up your fellow gun owners, your fellow veterans, and your fellow Americans. Even if you've never sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution, even if you've never served as military, police, or first responders, you're still Americans. You still have a duty and responsibility to preserve the liberty given to you by the blood of patriots. You still have a duty to hand that down to your posterity. At the close of this, I'm going to have my good friend Elias, who's a U.S. Marine, Vietnam combat vet, come up and do an oath ceremony. And I want to invite all of you, whether you're prior service or not, if you want to swear an oath, support and defend the Constitution, we're going to invite you to do so here today. Before I do that, I want to recognize we have lost, sadly, just in the 4 years of Oath Keepers, we have lost some outstanding patriots. One of them was Eddie Gilbert, was our active duty Cleveland police officer who served our first chapter president in Ohio. A very stand-up man. Whenever I needed him, he was there. I got a death threat once before the rally in DC. He showed up to watch my back, and he just passed away from pancreatic cancer. So I want to have today be an honor for him. Also, this last year, I lost my right arm. My vice president for the Eastern U.S. was Major Rex McTier, retired U.S. Special Forces. And Rex was an outstanding patriot. Out of the blue, he emailed us and said, I'm tracking with what you're saying, I believe in it, and I'm here to help. What can I do? And he flew out to our first conference in Las Vegas, and from that moment on, he was on my board, he was my right arm. And sadly, he died of a sudden heart attack this last year. I'm going to make sure that we add in our site dedication, we'll add Eddie Gilbert and Rex to that site dedication. And Rex's widow is right here in front. Karen McTier is here. She knew that Rex would want to be here today. She knew that he'd want to be on Lexington Green. So she made the trip all the way up here from South Carolina. Her and her friend drove up. We just want her to know that we love her very much. She's like a family to us. And I know Rex is here in spirit. Our website is also dedicated, our mission is dedicated to my father-in-law, John Adams. At the age of 15, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he lied about his age and joined the Marine Corps. His enlistment date was December the 10th, 1941, 3 days after Pearl Harbor. That is what it means to step up. He didn't look to the left or the right and see who else was going to do it. He stepped up at 15 years of age. And he fought all the way across the Pacific, including at Iwo Jima. That's what an Oath Keeper does. That's what an American does. And that is what's possible now today. The Japanese and the Nazis also thought we would not fight. They thought Americans were too soft, that they would never dare. They were too decadent and too decayed as a people to fight hard. They were proven wrong. Young Americans rose up out of the farms and the small towns and the cities of this nation and handed them their asses too. We have done that. We have done that throughout our history. All of our enemies underestimate us. The current domestic enemies underestimate us as well. Got it. Recently, I took a World War II veteran on an honor flight back to D.C. Warren Bodecker, you might have read about him on our website. U.S. Army Airborne, 3 combat jumps into the Philippines, one of which we helped to rescue an entire prison camp full of civilians who the Japanese were going to kill, including American citizens, but also men, women, and children from all over the world. And they parachuted in behind enemy lines and rescued all of them, saved them all. So I was honored to be his escort on an honor flight back to D.C. It was such a bittersweet experience. He's standing at the World War II Memorial with tears coming down his eyes, and you know what he told me? He said, for all that we went through, to see what's happening in our country now, that's why he was crying. He said, we dropped the ball. We came back, we defeated the Nazis, defeated the Japanese, we came back home, and we're busy raising our families, providing for them, and we were not paying enough attention to the domestic enemies of the Constitution.
Right.
So now, it is our duty, it is our watch, on behalf of all Americans, to stand up for what they fought for, to make sure their sacrifice, from Lexington Green all the way through the Civil War on both sides, all the way through World War I, World War II, the sands of Iwo Jima, the beach at Normandy, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all the blood spilled. You have to make sure it's not in vain. If you do not, they will curse you, and your children will curse you, and then you'll be right to be condemned and cursed. You must stand up now and preserve your birthright of liberty and hand it on to your children. It's your watch. You are like the first wave at Normandy Beach. Do you think those guys at the first wave tried to back out and go hide at the bottom of the ship? Or do they go over the side, climb down the ropes, get in the boats? What they do? They went ashore. The 101st Airborne. You've seen the photo of them talking to Eisenhower before they left. I'll bet you most of those guys that photograph did not come back. My grandfather fought at the Battle of the Bulge. My other grandfather did not return from World War II. He was a ball turret belly gunner on a B-17, not make it home. In my family, we have a legacy of serving in the military, like many of you do too. I understand my place in history. You got to make sure you understand yours. It's our watch. It's our turn on the green. It's our turn in the front ranks. Let's go. I say, we have a duty and obligation to purge out every oath breaker from office. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat. It's not about the left or right. It's about the Bill of Rights. And as Smedley Butler said, a two-time Medal of Honor winner Marine General, he said there are only two things worth fighting for. One is your homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights. Time to fight. So now I'm going to bring up Elias and do an oath ceremony. They fought and died. Have the same conviction they have. Keep your oath, or don't take it. If you're not going to take the oath with that kind of conviction, get off this green. All right, here's why.
How are you going to follow that without something that's even more powerful? You've been built up about the oath. Now, we're going to give you a chance to renew your oath or take it for the first time. And I want to say, I remove my hat. This is, as President John Adams said, a sacred obligation. It is meant to be lived once your breath bears the words to God in His heaven. This is serious stuff. I am so pleased and honored to be in Massachusetts today. I wanted to thank the police force in Lexington. When the police were asked to go to Waterton to chase that scum, they knew Oath Keepers was going to be there. And the police themselves stayed and made sure we could do this ceremony at Lexington Green today. My salute to the Lexington Police. My thanks to all the police officers who are running security for this event here. And my thanks to every Oath Keeper out here in the crowd wearing a shirt and our colors. And my thanks to each individual for being here today to share this moment. I'm going to read this brief oath in short sections. I'm going to ask you to stand as tall as you can, raise your right hand, and I'm going to start the oath by saying the word I. When I say I, each of you will put your name in the next words that come out of your mouth. I, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to same. And that I take this obligation freely. Without any mental reservation. Or purpose of without any mental reservation. Or purpose of evasion. Pledging